Welcome, Night Owls, to the Book Club After Dark podcast, an inviting moonlit podcast. I'm your host, Danny.
And I'm Michelle. We break down fantasy, romantasy, and thriller novels.
All things enchanting, intriguing, suspenseful, and maybe a little spicy. Again tonight with the spice.
Each episode features intimate discussions on captivating stories, character breakdowns, fan theories, and more. And this is your content warning. This podcast contains mature themes and discussions that may not be suitable for all audiences. Episodes include explicit language and descriptions of mature romance, as well as depictions of violence and other intense subject matter. This podcast is rated R for mature audiences. Listener discretion is advised.
Moving forward from here, there will be lots of spoilers in this episode covering Quicksilver, and of course in the series as a whole as we get into the next book, which isn't out yet, but we're still excited about it. So consider this your spoiler warning for Quicksilver by Callie Hart.
Let's get cozy because the best stories are told after dark.
Tonight's drink of the episode, week 2 of having an awesome partner for our drink of the episode. So this is also courtesy of the Milk District location of A La Carte. They have 2 locations. They have one in Soto District on Michigan, and they also have one in the Milk District. This one is courtesy of the Milk District, and they're really cool restaurant bar concept. If you haven't checked them out before, they have a whole outdoor area with multiple different food trucks, and they have their beer bar section, beer and wine. And tonight we are featuring a beer from them, which if you're just looking online, look at this can. How cool is that?
That's badass.
Now, don't let the name fool you. Okay, so describing the can, it's all black with a skull with something dripping down from it. It's melting in something, and it has a massive crown on it. And the way this is given, like the feeders, the whole vibe, Malcolm, it's giving all those vibes. And I just thought it was a really cool can, and they were really awesome to partner with us for Drink of the Episode. So this is called the Imperial Snowball Cupcake Stout. So don't let this terrifying can fool you. The name of the beer is actually the Snowball Cupcake Stout. It's got a stout with a coconut, cacao, vanilla beans, and marshmallow. So this is from the Angry Chair Brewing Company, and it's from Tampa, Florida. So here we go. Let me open this up. Like struggling. Okay. It is very, very stout.
It's dark.
It's like almost black. So for my lactose girlies and guys, this one's not for you. I did take a pill before I did this, but it does have some lactose in it. So here we go. Look how dark this beer is. Crazy dark stout. It is good. It's very heavy. It's also very strong. So make sure you drink your waters if you're drinking this during the daytime. It's a heavier beer. But it's delicious and highly recommend. So you can see how dark this beer is. You literally can't even tell this is a Harry Potter glass. That's how dark this beer is.
I love that it kind of reflects in chapter 40 when they actually go in to get Kingfisher. It's like as black as the water that they hit. So I kind of like that. Like I don't think that was intentional, but it does kind of reflect that black water.
It totally does. Damn, you're right. It totally does. I don't think that water tasted like coconut, vanilla, and chocolate, though.
Probably not.
But
cheers.
Thank you again, A La Carte and Amanda, the manager over there. We've never had a stout before. So now we've done our IPA. We've done our stout. I don't know who we're going to partner with next, Michelle, but I'm excited about it. I think there's going to be some other really cool local Orlando bars that we might be able to partner with going forward. Let's nurse ourselves back into this world. And we're going to be in Avalia. We're also going to be in college. We're also going to be kind of bouncing around a couple different locations this episode. We're going to be covering chapters 36 through 40, deep dive of Quicksilver by Callie Hart. So as you know, whether you're reading along with us or just here for the book talk, we are always glad that you're here.
Let's start with chapter 36. So Ishabal is our new character that we're going to be introduced to this chapter. So Saeris falls asleep at one of the formal living rooms because Carrion is snoring so loud, of course, probably cuddling one of his plants. And she takes her blanket and goes and finds a living room. And she wakes up and Fisher is sitting in a chair beside her, staring out the window. This is where we kind of see him like contemplating. We've seen this side of Fisher a lot, staring out the window, contemplating. He kind of looks a little peaceful, but there's something behind his eyes as he's trying to decide what his next steps are. And she immediately wants to walk away, but he grabs her hand.
Oh, she's pissed at him.
Right.
From where we left off on chapter 35. Yeah. She's like, I don't want to, like, you just admitted that you're giving your life up. Like, why? No.
Right. And intentionally going to reject the bond because, this is
Just a
me
few
being
things.
sacrificing. And she's like, way to make all the decisions of my life for me. I love it
Mm-hmm.
when people do that.
My favorite.
So go ahead, big screw you, and don't talk to me.
Right.
He grabs her hand and places his head on her arm. So this is a very like tender sort of move. And she lets a moment pass before really getting up and walking away. And when she looks back, she could read the defeat all over his body as he stares out the window. And then this way she returns to him and they have like this embrace until he said he was okay and then she left. So even though she's pissed at him because he makes all these decisions about how her life should be, she sees that this isn't easy for him either. Like none of this is easy. It's not like he wants to make these decisions. Like he wants to just be with Saeris. But he thinks his life and her life will be better, mainly her life will be better if their paths are not interconnected, which is like, you're fated by the gods. You can't fight it anymore. Just stop. The witches and the Balkidder clan left Avelia over 100 years ago and no one knows where they went. The group has about 36 hours before they need to be in Gilithry. They come up with this plan where the witches are the only ones powerful enough to fight the venom that's in Everlane's bloodstream based on Malcolm's bite. And they have this whole plan. They don't know where the Balkidder clan is, but they know there are half witches in this area. So they have this plan where they're going to go out and try to talk to them. And Taylana is going to draw out the poison using the assistance of one of the witches. So they really have to get this buy-in with the witches because they're not amicable.
Well, one thing too to note is that the witch's ability is basically, I read it as anesthesia. They keep them asleep. They keep them in a state of a stasis where Taylana is able to work, and they're able to do this with their magic. One key thing that was interesting to me on a reread was noticing that Saeris notices Renfis's state during this time. Renfis is basically like silent until just glimmer of hope here with finding the witches. The importance here is to note that the witches have a ability that no one else does. And we know that it's kind of talked about, but a number of people have talked about how they felt like the end chapters were kind of glazed over and they didn't fully understand the points of all different things. And so my thought was, when they're talking about going to get the witch, it's really important in the sense that no one else has the stasis ability that witches have. And this clan in particular, I think the reason we're hearing about them is because we're only getting the first taste of them at the end of this book. And I think they're going to be a more heavy hitter in book 2. Did you think that?
Yes, because they disappeared, right? We don't know where they are. So anytime a reader or an author says they're gone, that we haven't seen them for over a century, that means they're hiding somewhere. And we have a half relative, a descendant essentially from that line. So not 100% Balkidder. So that's just a little peek into, this is the powers of someone who has diluted blood. Imagine the strength of a full bloodline of this clan. So I agree. We'll probably see more of the clan and who knows where they went. So
yeah, and we only get for Ishabal, we only get such a very brief portion of her in this book anyway. But we know that when Everlane comes out, they're waiting for her. We just don't get that perspective because it's Saeris' perspective.
Right.
So we kind of miss parts of that. We don't get a whole lot here with them. But I do think it is definitely foreshadowing the information that we get about the witch clan here. And that clan in particular has some relevancy, especially because there were lies told about the king, which is Everlane's father. Obviously, she mentions this, that there were lies told throughout the realm. And this is why they had to go into hiding because of Velikon. I'm curious to see how that storyline kind of branches out so I'm eager to see where her storyline and all of that kind of goes. But anyway, they're kind of researching this. They're trying to figure out where they're going to go. Carrion requests to go on this trip to Fulton's Gap with Fisher and Wren. And Fisher's like, no, I'm not having you try to bang a bunch of witches. And Wren and Lorith are like, oh, no, they're like, why would some of these witches are like, they're not attracted. Like, why would you want to?
But
no.
Carrion's like, that's probably a fair assessment of what I would do anyways. So yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And so Fisher's like, if you're not going to be of a help, like, no. The answer is you're not going. Danya volunteers to go, and Carrion's like, yeah, she needs to go. She's basically not welcome here. We don't want her hanging out, and she's putting a dark cloud over the library. So, okay, toodles, time for you to go. Not a good fit. Saeris at this point, because Taylena makes a comment, Saeris is like, in her mind, realizing that she's been jealous of Taylena. Of course, we've all known this, not new information. But she's like realizing how sick Kingfisher is because Taylena makes a comment, make sure you see me before you go. And as soon as you come back, I need to see you. And so now she knows that there's no jealousy that needs to be there, but she wants to know how she's helping Fisher with the Quicksilver. And then obviously it's not working that well, whatever it is that she's doing. It's only just I kind of viewed it as like an ibuprofen or something like that. It's not going to actually fix anything, but maybe it kind of dulls it for a little bit, enough that he can somehow function. I mean, yeah.
So hours later, it's snowing outside, and they still hadn't found answers in their book. And then all of a sudden, a shadow gate opens, and Ren storms in, cursing Danya. They found the witches, and they were going to help. Then Danya fucks it up because that is what she does. She made a comment about how it's the least they can do since they left the Fae to clean up their mess. And then all hell breaks loose. Yeah, we don't like Danya. So Fisher is taking her back to Herron. Ultimately, is like, I'm tired of having you around. You need to go in time out. Go blow off some steam. Yeah. Because no, you're fucking everything up. This is like our one shot. And that's my sister. Get over yourself. And then he's going to go back to Fulton's Gap by himself so he can speak to one really strong witch who really did want to help. She was young, and Ren referenced her as the most irritating, foul-mouthed creature he's ever met, which is really great to hear from Ren. Ren doesn't really like her, but knows she's important. This is who our main witch is going to be. And then Fisher returns 3 hours later with Ishabal. And she looks about Saeris' age, which we know is all a lie. And Saeris is like, she looks my age, but she's probably like 900 or something. And her hair is fiery
still don't know.
red. We have no idea what she is. There is reference to her being young, but in terms of Fae, what is young? You know, her hair
she's a witch, so we have no idea, even from that standpoint, what a witch's length of life is either. So it's good. It's a good indicator here that she's older than we think.
Right. Her hair was fiery red and wavy, eyes bright blue, and had freckles across her face. She wore a loose cream shirt with billowing sleeves and a velvet waistcoat in hunter's green and fitted black pants. So I took this
like
as
her fit,
very...
just saying.
I do too. It's very... If I were to picture like a Scottish witch, that I would picture this essentially with the billowing sleeve and the waistcoat and
practical.
Very iconic. Yeah. She's the granddaughter of the Balkidder High Witch Melina, and she agreed to help bring her back tomorrow night, her being ever lame. And Ishabal questioned the 5 going to challenge Malcolm. She's like, these are your 5 people. And Fisher's like, Saeris and Carrion aren't coming. There's just going to be 3 of us. But both argued and said they were ready to fight for their friend. And Carrion's like, I'm ready to be a part of the team. I've never met her before, but, I stand on principle. And we're going to all fight together. And Fisher's like,
wants to be part of the action for any good reason.
He's waiting for his... Yeah, because he's waiting for his time.
Yes.
So he's like, I'm going to volunteer for everything.
Announce. So he's like, I have to get into a spot where I can announce who I am. There's going to be a window. Got to get my window going.
Yeah.
And Saeris is pissed at this because she's like, the fuck, I'm staying here. No, you're not leaving me behind. Like, yeah, right. And so then there's argument, of course, in front of everybody. And then they're just like, fine. And he's like, fine. I can't stop you. Whatever. I did want to point out on the map that if you look at it at the beginning of the book, it specifically outlines like where the Shadow Gate is going, and it's far to get to. They're going over the Shallow Mountains from Kalish. They're going from all the way into Galaria, northeast, to the Balkidder clan lands, and it's literally specifically marked on the map where this is, where the breach is, and where this whole area of the map is. And I do think it's a foreshadowing that we may go here again, and that maybe there's Quicksilver in this area as well, and there's a possibility that we need to travel there again in Brimstone. There's a mention of them being dragon sympathizers, and Ishabal gets really pissed about this comment. And I think that that's an indicator, again, to where we're going to go in book 2. So I think everything that happens with her having a new introduced character so far into the book sets us up very nicely for her purpose and what she's going to do supporting Everlane in book 2. And maybe, which I'm really excited about, maybe we get a direction that kind of segues off into a new storyline with what's going on with the witches and their involvement overall, and why they felt the need to fully go into hiding and what happened there. So I'm eager to see where that takes us.
And to your point, I think the map is going to just drastically expand because there's mentions of other courts. We have the Autumn Court, and I'm sure there are other elemental or seasons-based courts, but we only have the Winter Palace. Like, I believe this is a very just small fragment of their world specifically, and that is going to expand, let alone the ability to use the Quicksilver to basically transport to another dimension or another world. So the map's just going to drastically just get bigger. But I agree. It's just we're going to see more of the witches, and we'll see where it goes from there.
So chapter 37, much sharper. And the way that this chapter has made the rounds on the Book Talk and Bookstagram world, who's like walking around listening to Quicksilver, they're like, oh, what chapter are you on? And they're like, always like chapter 37, always. They're always saying chapter 37. So we know it's about to get spicy. Spice. Here we go. Fisher finds Saeris asleep on the couch again. She passes out. And he's like, you did not think I was going to let you sleep on the couch again, right? You're not going to sleep here again. I don't want you to spend another night without me. Like, and she's listening to this and, getting swept off her feet. And Fisher asks her, though, does that scare you? Yeah. But he's so self-sacrificial to her, like with her, that he's like, does that scare you? Is that like the thought of that scary? And she's like, no, like I want that too. I'm not still pissed at you. I want that too. Mm-hmm. And he's like, okay, well, come with me. And so they're going to have a night together, and they'll worry about Everlane tomorrow. And then once she's healed, he offers this little tidbit of, we can worry about me. And this was kind of her breaking her madness completely. Him saying to her that he's going to actually focus on himself after Everlane is good and they survive everything that goes on with her. This is a turning point for her of Saeris kind of accepting his apology because now he's willing to work on himself. So this is something he didn't offer up before. So the fact that he's willing to work on himself now, she kind of melts into, all right, I'm going to forgive you. I still love and care about you. Okay, at least now you're willing to work on yourself and you haven't just given up hope completely.
Right.
So he ends up making a shadow gate, which magic is so fucking cool. It really is. I can't wait to see the shadow gates on Netflix. I'm really excited for that. So they step through a gate into the apartment in Ballard. Again, this is beautiful. There's just thousands of candles everywhere, all over the room, all over the apartment as a whole. And he just covers the entire apartment in black smoke, and then all you can see are the candle lights. And
like
the way that they imagine
stars.
this is, and she even comments that she feels like they're in their own, like they're floating in space, kind of their own area where no one can touch them, and they can finally have this like peaceful moment. I love the idea that they can escape to Ballard and have their own time where Carrion isn't just going to like burst open a door with newfound evidence of what's going on with Everlane, or Renfis isn't going to come beating down the door. Like they're going to finally have a moment where no one's really going to follow them and they get this time by themselves. Of course, we know that this whole time, Fisher already has his plan. He already knows what he's going to do, which is why in this chapter is so difficult, especially on a second read, because the first time you enjoy it as Saeris and you're like, oh, great. You haven't seen this dark twist that you already know is there, and you haven't really understood what Fisher's about to do. But the chapter makes so much more sense when you start to see it through Fisher's eyes. And
there's a sadder undertone. If you do way.
We also know that Callie, kind of similar to our girl Rebecca, doesn't really write spice just to write spice, that it moves the story forward and has something else we should be watching out for. And in this case, what we should be watching out for is that Fisher already has a plan. And he kind of alludes to that because they have this really great banter again, back and forth. There's one of the most highlighted sections of the entire book, which has, 16,654 highlights.
A lot of highlights.
It's a lot of highlights. And they're right in the middle of passionately kissing, getting all sorts of open door spice, right? Very, very spicy, very full frontal, no questions of what's happening in these scenes whatsoever. And Callie Hart does an excellent job writing these. We've talked about this before. She's a dark romance author. She knows what she's doing in the bedroom. There's no questions asked. What you don't pick up on is the dark undertone and what's happening with Fisher in these moments, because he gets really into this too. And all you do is focus on what he's saying, which what he says right here, I am about to introduce you to all 7 gods. When you meet them, don't forget to tell them I'm the one that you worship on your knees. And the way that everybody highlighted this, and I cannot do if you haven't listened to the audiobook, I did not do that line justice at all. Oh. You need to go listen to this on the audiobook. You need to experience it in that format, because I swear to you, it is different than reading it on the page. It's great reading it on the page. It's even better listening to it. It's just so well done by these voice actors. But it's a distraction. This is a distraction where this is his last time he thinks with her. The way I never really thought about it until after the fact. So they're having their moment, and all of a sudden he gets this new tattoo. It's a bird that's appeared, and it's similar to the one she has on her chest. And the way I was kind of like, Saeris, girl.
How do we not connect the two? Well, she noticed that the tattoos were also coming back to her hands. And she's just like, okay, that's fine. And she's accepting them. And she's accepting all this like in her head. And she's not I know Fisher accepts the bond, but she's also like, this is fine. Everything's fine. Like accepting of all the things that are going on as well.
Right. And she's not asking any questions until later, like much later. Yes. And so they, basically christen every room of the house, go on about their business throughout the house.
3 hours.
Yes. They were very busy bees. And they go about this for 3 hours, right? And everyone who's wondering, like, oh, why isn't this a pregnancy trope? Well, I'll tell you, because she can't get pregnant. Remember, she is sterile. So that's not going to happen here. And there's a moment where they finally take a break and they're having a snack in the living room. And she's like, oh, why did you get this tattoo? And he's like, oh, I don't know why I got it. And he tries to like, well, if I make you say my name again, will you stop asking? And she's like, no. And then he talks about how Fae, when they're little, are first told how to distract people. Like it's a talent of theirs. I thought that was interesting too. And I'm wondering where else we're going to see that with other characters, if we're going to see it again. But the art of distraction here is literally he brings her here so that there's no focus on the fact that he's already made up his mind. This entire thing is a distraction, even though it's for selfish gains. And he even says that he's selfish. He did this for himself, because she's like, oh, you did all this for me. And he's like, I mean, I did it for you, but I also did it for me. Like, I'm selfish, Saeris, so you know. And while this time you're thinking, oh, it's because he's trying to get laid. Yes, and it's not just that. He's made up his mind about what he wants to do next. And then he says this specific quote, and this is exactly where there's this turning point on a reread where you're like, oh. He says, I'll be grateful for every second that I can say that I belong to you, Saeris Fane. Is it 80 years or 18 hours? It doesn't matter to me. It'll still be the highest honor of my life. And the way that I focused on 80 years because she's human was the wrong part to be focusing on. He says 18 hours. That's what he meant. This is the last time that he's going to be with her. And it's right there. And I missed it. Did you pick up on it?
I mean, I figured so when I read this, it was more like, okay, so he thinks they're going to die. I didn't think even as a first listen, I'm like, okay, he thinks they're going to die when they're over there. I didn't think he was going to leave her behind. And that's the last time. So that, I was like, man, shit, you just left. So I was actually shocked my first listen through. At the second read through, I was like, oh, no. He was just distracting. This whole time, he's distracting with his sweet words. And in that tone, I don't blame a girl. Because if his voice is what the voice of the audiobook, don't blame her one bit. Plus, with all the physical stuff, yep. So he accepts the bond, and he explains to her that doesn't mean she has to also. He makes the tattoos disappear ultimately, and he says he's in love with her, and he's already half mad. Might as well make things a little bit more complicated. But Fisher asks her not to respond. Also, like, please just. Because she like opens her mouth to say something. And he's like, please just let me live in my little fantasy for one night. Because he is anticipating, and this is where I missed it too, because he's anticipating centuries of literally being tortured, and he wants to hang on to this
Again.
one night so he can kind of have something tangible to like hold on to while he's being tortured for however long he thinks he's like for eternity he's going to do this.
Right.
So it kind of, when you put that perspective on this whole thing, it makes it just not taints it, but just makes it so much more sad in the experience. And she felt sleep was pulling her. So obviously, 3 hours, your girl's tired.
Yeah.
And she asks him, or she says, "When we were here last time, you said that the people of Ballard had something you needed, but you never got it," she whispered. He's like, "Yes, I did. I came for a little hope." And now he has like this little tangible thing of hope because of Saeris. And really taking her back to where his mother is. This is connection to his mother, and she's a connection to his mother. It's sweet and it's sad. It's heartbreaking. It's all the feels.
Yep, it's a great chapter. First read, you're here for the vibes. You're just thinking, ooh, spice, and kind of missing all the chunks of what's really going on. And on a second read, it's almost heartbreaking to read through. It's still a great spice scene, yes, but it's
so much more.
It's a tougher read that next time. Yeah, absolutely. Which brings us to chapter 38, Martyrs for Friends. Saeris wakes up and she is in the bedroom. She smells sugar, warm sunlight, and she realizes that she was in his mother's bed, but he's not there. So she's immediately like panicked. So she runs around the house like naked in the nude to try to find him. Then there's a shadow gate in the middle of the living room with an outfit for her. Underneath the outfit is a note. And the way I read this the first time, my gut just dropped. I was like, and the note itself is rough. Basically says, well, this seems dramatic, Saeris, but like it's gonna be okay. Like you're gonna understand. It'll be fine. And then it says that the gate's gonna take her back to college, and he was gonna send Everlane back as soon as he can. So this tells you he knows where he's gone. He's gone to go get Everlane. Ishabel is gonna sedate her right away. So you need to make sure that Everlane doesn't try to jump back, right? Because the gate's open for longer period of time. So don't let Everlane jump back, because she's going to want to, because she's going to be so close to like transitioning, and she's going to be enthralled with him that she's going to want to get back to her like master as soon as she can. So Fisher says he wants Lorith to go live his life and not worry about him. I have endless patience and no interest in having martyrs for friends. So of course the name of the chapter is referring to Lorith and the piece of Fisher's soul that's attached to Lorith, where if Lorith lives and Fisher dies, Fisher will be trapped in a purgatorial sense until Lorith passes. And he's saying at this point, knowing that he's about to go back to getting tortured, that he's okay with Lorith going on with his life and not making himself a martyr because of this situation.
Right.
So just a recap there. Fisher basically tells Renfist how he'll never be like him and how he's done all these great things for the people of Kalish, and that he wishes that he could have been half the man that Renfist is, and that he's sorry, which is heartbreaking. So the whole thing is just awful. And then he ends the note just by saying, I release you, little Osha, from your oath. You know how to make the relics now. And, if you need to go then you need to go. But I'm not going to tie you to force you to do this anymore. But go explore other realms and go make a new one your home. Like, forget about me.
And he hopes that they ultimately meet in the afterlife from this. And it's really heartbreaking. And she's immediately like, what the fuck? I was pissed. She sinks down to her knees and just starts sobbing. And she sees that Nimmerel rested upon the mantle, which absolutely broke her. So she knew he went by himself into enemy territory without his sword, without protection. Like, he literally just went, and he knew his whole goal was to just trade. I will trade myself, and Everlane goes back. Like, no fight, nothing. He just accepts this as defeat. And Sarah storms out of the Shadow Gate and into Fisher's bedroom and startling Carrion. And the way I'm like, what the fuck is Carrion doing in Fisher's bathroom? Or bedroom. Like, why is he here?
Yeah, why is he there? And then he's like pissed that he gets abruptly interrupted.
Yeah, he's like, bro, what are you even doing here? And he's like, well, I was looking for Onyx, and I guess he was sleeping here. Which also, like, Onyx just really loves Kingfisher. So, which Carrion's also, he's like, I was looking for onyx. He's like, why are you looking for onyx? Don't you have something important to do? He's like, let me just play with the fox. You know, him being.
I have a question for
silly.
you before we move on. Fisher signs this just with an F. He doesn't write Fisher.
Right.
And I wonder, because he's finally having this last note to her, and his name is, he's
His
never
real
told
name.
her his name. Yeah. I wonder if his real name does start with an F.
Right. I think, yeah. No, that's a good point.
Maybe.
Probably. I would think so.
Because he wants to be honest with her, but he can't, he's not going to write out his whole, just in
then
case.
everyone can see it.
You know, he doesn't want everybody to know it. But he doesn't sign it Fisher either. So that made me wonder if the first letter of his real name still starts with an F. Curious to know if he was trying to be honest with her. It could be nothing. Could very well just be short for Fisher. I don't know. Just wondering what your thoughts were there.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I was like, okay, F for Fisher. But now that you bring it up, I'm like, yeah, maybe. That sounds good. Get a little Easter egg there.
Why not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then Carrion's like, there's some tension in the air. So he like kind of questions her about Kingfisher. And she immediately is like, where's everyone else? And goes into the library and just like throws the note at Ren. And Ren and Lorth both read it and they're like, fucking Kingfisher. So they're pissed. And she's like trying to brainstorm. And she's like, I know I can access a Quicksilver pool, but there's not one in Gillithry. So that's totally pointless. And all in the room are upset Fisher for taking this burden on all by himself. But then Carrion read the letter again. He's like formulating a plan because he remembers the Shadow Gate. And the Shadow Gate didn't close immediately after Saeris walked through it. And she's like, I don't know, it probably was open for 10 seconds. There's always a delay of some sort. This one might have been longer. I don't know. And he's like, well, when the Shadow Gate opens, when Kingfisher brings Everlane back, why don't we just hop through it and go get him? They're like, oh, that's a
and then
great
I was
plan.
like, why didn't I think of that? And also, why didn't any of you think of that? Carrion, who's been here 3 minutes. Like, how did you?
He's just always thinking. That's why he's such his character is so deep, which we know with his backstory, it's going to be deeper. But I think there are just so many layers to Carrion as well that everyone underestimates him. And then he says, I'm coming with you through the portal. I'm going to help you save your asshole boyfriend. But first, I want one of those fancy swords. So this is where we get his sword. So I love that he's like, I want a sword.
And because we know it's also probably going to be a while before it's not like they're abandoning Fisher here. They know that it's going to be several hours before Everlane's going to fly through a portal. So she has time to make a plan here.
Right.
Carrion and Saeris are back in the forge, and the Quicksilver's asking for a joke. And Saeris gives it a really terrible joke. And Carrion's like, what is that joke? No. If it wants a joke, I'll give it a joke. A husband turns to his wife one day and says, you know, I bet you can't think of something to tell me that will make me both happy and sad at the same time. And the wife doesn't even need to think about it. She turns to her husband and says, your cock is way bigger than your brother's. And the Quicksilver laughs. And Saeris is like, really? And so Carrion continues to tell it the most like disturbingly dirty jokes. Really. And she's just cringing the whole time. Like, seriously, like, I'm gonna have to submit to that. And then of course she finishes the sword. He bleeds a little bit out the sword, and shocker, it's accepted. The name he gives it, though, had me rolling. I was dead.
Yeah. It's like, name me. And Carrion names the sword Simon. She was like, Simon? But the sword accepts the name. It's like, yeah, Simon. It's like, what?
Yeah. Like, no, there's no like Simon? Big meaningful name. He's just like, I just liked Simon. It's like,
yeah, it felt like a Simon.
Which just fits.
Yeah.
It felt like, yeah.
Well, it
fits
his
Carrion.
character. Yeah, because he's very much like, I'm going to go by gut feeling. I'm going to go by vibes. And that's just the vibe I got. Simon. Like, okay.
And he's also not a panicker. Because, like, I imagine myself as Carrion, and you've waited 1,000 years for this opportunity. And the way I'd just be, like, out of my shell, like, losing my mind, waiting for the time I'm supposed to do this thing. 1,000 years. But maybe not. Maybe he's just, like, gotten to a point where he understands time is going to open to him at the right moment when it's supposed to. And he's just kind of like, just going to vibe until it happens.
Saeris references, is your sword going to allow your human blood to like wield magic? I guess we're going to see that. He's like, that's between me and the sword. Like, he just says nothing. Like that's none of your concern.
Because he knows he doesn't have any human blood at all.
Right. But none. Also, like, a comment like
not
that, it's like, boy, you make everyone else's business your business. And now you're like, that's for me to know.
I'm just going to keep the secret. me to know and you to find out. Yeah, I'm just not going to say anything. Okay.
He's a mess.
So Ishbal and Taylena are setting up space to treat Lane. They're getting ready because they know where the portal is going to open. They are not sure that this is going to be successful. They just don't know if this is going to work out. Lorith is unsure of the witch in general. He makes a comment about them being dragon lovers and that if it weren't for them, vampires wouldn't exist at all. This enrages Ishbal, and she corrects Lorith right away, and that she says the statement, which I kind of mentioned earlier, of the witches have proved for centuries that they had nothing to do with the curse that afflicted the Fae. The Balkhitter clan found the cure for the curse. So that right there is such a key indicator of why Belicon would definitely want to get rid of them, is his brother wants to stay a vampire and does not want any kind of cure. It also furthers why Belicon continued to not support aid and help his brother continue to produce this massive army, because he's been all for it all along. He's like, yeah, you want to establish more power? I want to establish more power. Great. We're going to use your whole feeder army. It's like Pinky and the Brain taking over the world over here. That's like what's going on. That's the vibe I was getting from these two.
Which one's Pinky and which one's Brain?
Neither. They're both a mess.
Both a mess.
I think they both think that they're the brain. Neither one is.
Right. And then so Ishbal is explaining this. Then all of a sudden a shadow gate opens and a dark blue object is hurled from it and crashes onto the table. The shadow gate's normally vertical, but this time it's horizontal, and it just
from
Everlane
the ceiling
just drops from the ceiling
literally
onto
Jesus.
The table and breaks it. And like they're not ready because they were like looking for things. They were
expecting
prepping
it later too.
Yeah, because it was supposed to be at dusk, and it is not dusk. It is not that late. They still had hours. And Saeris has to go get her sword quickly, and Carrion goes in first, then Saeris. And Everlane was crying out for Saeris and warning her about the water. And Saeris has no time to process this because she is pulled into the gate and is falling. And that's how we end this chapter.
Right. Chapter 39. Anarath Moor, which of course we know means release us. We've heard this now so many times, and we're finally getting to this critical point where we're going to start to understand why Kingfisher is plagued with Anarath Moor repeating, and why Saeris keeps hearing it over and over again. We're starting to finally get to that reveal. This is where we see the black pool of water, like our beer, where at the very bottom, below her, 80 feet below her, she's just falling into this black pool, massive thing of water. She hits the surface. She's processing this, and she's just in she's a mess. She's in a mess amount of pain. Lorith grabs her and basically drags her onto the shore. He ends up finding Carrion in the water, thank goodness, and because Carrion had no warning because he was first, had no idea. Lorith had some idea, so he was able to like ball himself like cannonball style and get into the water where he didn't hurt himself. And then he's obviously Fae, so Carrion's Fae too, but at least he's not going to be as badly.
Right, but also Carrion and Saeris don't know how to swim because there isn't water in Zilvarin. They literally don't know how to swim, and that's why Saeris is like struggling, and that's what Lorith like helps her out. And Carrion basically almost drowned because he breathed in water. His lips and face was blue, and
yeah.
Like,
and Lorith is doing CPR, and Saeris is like, "What are you doing? What are you doing to him?" Like, but she trusts Lorith, so like she would have like been like, "Why are you hitting him? What the hell?" And Saeris like screams at Carrion because she's freaking out. Yeah, and Saeris is like, "If you don't wake up, Carrion Swift, I'm telling everybody in the third that you're a shitty lay." And he finally comes to, of course he does, and looks over and is like, "You wouldn't fucking dare." And I died. So I was like, if Carrion was ever going to wake up for any reason, it would have to be because
to
someone
clear
was
his
threatening
name
that he wasn't a good lay. Yeah, had to clear his name. Couldn't have that. So Renfist doesn't make it. Lorith explains that Renfist does not make it through because it closed too quickly, and that Lorith almost didn't make it himself. He was concerned that it was going to close in on him. Yeah. He was almost going to be cut in half with half his body on one side and the other. Can you imagine? I was like, I never really thought about that, but I guess it would. Like, if you don't make it all the way through, you're dead. Yeah, not making it. Damn, that makes horrible. A whole nother level of like, do I even want to go through this thing? Just saying.
To risk it, right?
Yeah. Lorith pulls out Widow's Bane, which we find out is this basically morphine. I kind of viewed it as, so in World War II, the Germans used meth to give to their soldiers so that whenever they were injured or tired or whatever, they would just stay awake, and they end up getting addicted to meth, and then a lot of them end up dying from meth addiction. And the way that this widow's bane is described is very similar to opioid addiction and similar to that as well. So that was my kind of takeaway, because basically he's like, what will happen is you'll dead in the pain, but we don't give it out often because soldiers will get addicted to it, and this ends up killing them because they can't feel anything anymore, and then they're reckless, or they're addicted to this and they can't function from it.
Here I was just focusing on the fact. I was just focusing on the fact that he's like, don't swallow it or you're gonna shit it all out in 5 minutes. So I'm like, that's where I was focusing.
My bad.
And you're like, oh, there's this whole backstory. I'm like, oh, just don't eat it. Just don't actually eat it and you'll be fine. Your bowels will be fine.
I'm like not worried about the bowels. I'm like worried about addiction rates amongst Fae warriors. Anyway.
Oh no. Emergency shitting, no bathroom. That's pretty.
Oh, legit terrible. Yeah, no. We can't just like stop the whole story of Kingfisher to take a poo. Like that's not happening. There's no way. So they look around and there's this massive cliff of obsidian. So just rock. And piecing it together, they're on the outside of the labyrinth now, which is where Fisher has been for the last 110 years. He's back here where the obsidian cliffside is. And so Saeris can feel Fisher up on the cliff, so she knows that that's where they need to go. And at first she's like, oh, it's snowing. And then she's like, wait a minute, it's not cold. Oh my God, this is ash. And then she starts hearing, because things start shaking, and it's that Anarathmore chant. And they are used to, Carrion and Saeris are so used to climbing cliff sides basically in Zilvarin and having to be nimble on their feet and stuff, that they're able to scale this and kind of put their pain aside because they just took the widow's bane that Lorth provided. So Saeris definitely had a couple cracked ribs from her fall, but because she has the widow's bane, she kind of keeps going. And this is relevant later too of how effective this stuff is. The other side of the amphitheater, there are hundreds of thousands of people in the stands, and they keep chanting the same thing, Anarathmore. Saeris recognizes the amphitheater as like a slaughterhouse. There's a dais, and Fisher's at the base of it. Behind her, Herron, who we thought died but didn't see a body of, with Madra, the guard that we saw way back when, the beginning of the book, is talking to Saeris. So she turns around, and he looks like shit. He's like almost dead. He has like no teeth, he's decaying. He does not look like he should be alive at all.
No. But there's Quicksilver in his eyes. Like his eyes are pure Quicksilver. So clearly that's what's keeping him alive at this point in time, because he was clearly beaten to shit. I mean, when we last saw him, he was definitely beaten to shit. But afterwards,
well, she pushed the Quicksilver into him too.
Right, exactly. But I'm sure it got way worse once Madra saw him and realized what had happened to him. And Saeris is like, what the fuck? Because he has a dagger to Lorth's neck also, and is threatening to kill him just to get to Saeris. And she's like, you shouldn't be alive. Like, you shouldn't be here. Like, why are you in Avelia?
Yeah,
why aren't you even? And from behind him, hundreds of feeders crawl on all fours over the cliff face. And then Herron creates like a vortex for Sarah to jump through to not miss the games, is what he's calling it. And the vortex is described very differently from the Shadow Gate. It's like she describes it as like cracked air. Like he's literally like warping like the space in front of him and like cracking and twisting it around. And Lorth is like, it's okay, go in, we'll follow you. You just need to go, because it's supposed to like they're at like the top of the amphitheater, but they need to get closer because she can barely see Fisher at the bottom of the dais. Yeah. And they're like,
he's like, we don't have time to walk. So
we're just gonna hop and skip over there. And Saeris speaks to Fisher in his mind that they came for him, and he like starts panicking immediately. He's like, what the fuck? He's telling her like, do not come, but it's obviously too late. They're already there.
Yep, it's too late now. And here's where it's all finally about to get into our dramatic conclusion. But remember, this is chapter 40, so you have to wait for next episode for us to get into the nitty gritty of that. So let's get to chapter 40, which is titled Introductions, our last chapter of this episode. Fisher was the first thing she sees, because she just automatically zones in on him. She sees him on his knees. He's covered in blood. Fisher keeps mind talking to her, saying like, are you here? I saved you from this. You're not supposed to be here. That was the whole point. Because he's trying to figure out, and he's probably pieced it together by now, that they came through his gate. And that's how they were able to do it. Like how they were able to get there is he knows that Everlane just went through, and he's just like, why did you do this? Why did you do this? Like, how did you figure this out? Malcolm is sitting at the center. So the siblings are on either side, which is interesting to me in terms of power. I guess because he's technically the most powerful sibling, he's going to be the lead, sure. But they represent human, vampire, and fae of the three of them. And the triumvirate, which we see this again that we've seen before in Onyx Storm, but this is also or in Fourth Wing as a whole. But this is another triumvirate, which is different than anything we've seen before. So Malcolm's sitting in the center. To the right is Belicon. To the left is Madra. Malcolm guesses the identities of the three of them, tries to guess the identity of the three of them, but does not know who Carrion is. And it's just like, I don't know you. And it's just like, fine with that. And Lorith and Saeris reach for their swords. Belicon's like, this is a place for death. Don't even try it. It's not going to work. Like, you really think that you're going to fight us? Like, please. This is where we also see revealed that Madra calls Belicon her brother. And Saeris is just, this whole time, her brain is not processing what she's seeing because it doesn't make sense for her that Belicon is here and Madra would be here with Malcolm. And hearing them say that they're siblings is like not even, she's still trying to like, she's like, wait, what?
Because they're supposed to be enemies. Like that's how it's always been painted. So processing this is very difficult for her. And so she's yelling like, what do you mean? Like she's the one that stilled the Quicksilver. And he's like, yeah, we know. We had some sibling tiffs early on, but all is forgiven. It's fine. We're now here, a united front, so all three of us can be the most powerful we can be. And she's just processing. Right. And Lorith is too, because Lorith, has the same idea. It's not just because she's human, but Lorith has the same idea of like, we're all enemies here. What are you talking about? And this is where we realize the details of Belicon's betrayal and how he intentionally stacked the odds against his own army because he was intentionally feeding Malcolm's army, his own people, so he would get stronger and ultimately overtake the rest of what he could. And so all three of them can be in power, which is just wild. Like you're sacrificing
more than
your
one
own
realm.
People.
Well, think about it. Belicon doesn't want to actually move his armies to take on more. He wants to move his armies, which are virtually unstoppable. He wants to move them through the Quicksilver. This is all part of his plan all along to figure out how they can go take over other realms. He doesn't want to just stop at the realm that they're in. He wants to figure out how they can use the massive pool that Belicon has acquired, where all the Quicksilvers resided, where he took all those little pools and made his big one underneath his winter palace, how he's going to end up moving his brother's forces so they can just start ruling the worlds. Plural.
Which I'm like, anytime where I see like villains like combine forces thinking that's going to be equal across, it's like, why would, if you feed Malcolm's forces and he gets so strong, why would he need you? He wouldn't need you anymore. So that's just wild to me. But, power is blinding. And
corrupts.
We also, this is where we also get a hint of where Fisher's guilt lies as he was here in the past. And Malcolm's like talking about how the fall of Gilith and Fisher's a witness to it and partook in it. And Belicon ends up taunting Fisher about his oath, and it goes back and forth on that, how he can't speak about the atrocities he was forced
why don't you
to
tell
commit
him?
here. Yeah, why don't you tell them? And then Belicon was like, well, maybe I should release you from the oath, but let's let the people around us decide. The hundreds of thousands that you killed, they should probably have a say. And this is when they start chanting Anarath more. And Saeris realizes the people around her are literally charred and frozen in time as this like melting versions of themselves.
Horrifying.
Very much so. And then this
is where we get the true horror element of the story. And I really feel like the Netflix movie is going to be released in the fall time frame because I think that there's just too many graphic elements to this story for it to not be like a slightly horror-based release.
For sure.
That's my thought. Or at least
Yeah.
end in the fall time frame. Maybe it starts in summer. I don't know how if they're doing it on episodes. I don't know what, but this particular scene is gruesome to say the least. And there's been several scenes that have been gruesome leading up to this. So this is definitely not. Yeah, this one's pretty horrific here.
Yeah, and then Bellicon removes the oath and commands the Bane of Gilithry to tell his friends all about the deal he struck all those years ago. And that's where we end chapter 40. So we'll go into detail the next episode of that deal and wrap up our coverage of Quicksilver and go into a really, intense ending.
Crazy.
Now it's time for Mystery Q&A. These questions have not been shared with either of us prior to asking.
So there's this trend going around right now that's like about the butterfly effect. And so if there was a butterfly effect decision that you can think of that would have multiple effects on other things in your life, what would it be? And let me give you a prompt, because there's a prompt to this that's like the part that's going viral. The butterfly effect is crazy because what if? That's the prompt.
Okay. I already know this one, just because the way things set up for me to like meet my husband, everything fell into place in like a weird way. So in college, I was in my senior year, but I was dating someone else completely different. And the relationship ended up not working out. But in that relationship, I was debating on whether I should just graduate. My first degree is an English degree, or if I should stay and get a second degree, and I would only need to stay for another year. And I was very hesitant because I didn't want to immediately come out and like, what am I going to do with an English degree? I'm just going to be a teacher. Joke's on me, because that ended up happening anyways. But the person I was dating was like, you should just stay, get your other degree. Since it's covered, you might as well just do it. So we ended up breaking up like not too long after that. And that's when I met my husband. If I hadn't been with that person, I likely wouldn't have stayed another year in school. And that was the first time that my husband, he was mostly virtual, but he spent his senior year on campus, and I was also on campus. So we worked at the same pizza place when, he moved to the university. Because of that, our paths crossed. And so if I didn't date this person, I likely wouldn't have stayed another year, and our paths probably wouldn't have crossed. And I probably wouldn't be married to my husband today. Yeah. So that's my what if. What's your what if?
What if I hadn't found and been comfortable joining at the right time in my life in 2018, joining a dog moms group where I have never joined something like that. And we had puppies. You and I had puppies at the same time, and we met through our dogs. We would not be here now with Book Club After Dark. We would have never met. We would have never crossed paths, you and I.
Right.
Yeah. So the way that we met is totally dependent on just clicking that, hey, I guess I'll join this dog moms group that I've never had interest in before, and we'll see what happens with that. I didn't think anything of it, really.
So we had just moved to Orlando when I joined that group too. We had gotten my dog, Reagan, and we had just moved to Orlando. And one of our mutual friends, she actually sent me an Instagram message. It's like, hey, I have this dog mom group. It's Orlando based. You should join. And I was like, okay, why not? I'm new here. I don't know anyone. So yeah, then we wouldn't be here.
We wouldn't. I don't know if listeners knew that. We met via
dog mom.
Originally, we met through a dog mom Instagram meetup group, which is wild. And that's since dissolved many years ago, actually. That's dissolved a while ago.
We're the only two left in Orlando from the group.
I think so. Yeah, from that group. Yeah. That tracks.
Wild. Okay, so I have another trend that is on Instagram and TikTok, and it's about like what is your horror movie? Like what is like a moment in time that is your horror movie? And a lot of people take this like to be silly or to make it about like books or movies, and like that's their big horror story is like some sort of plot twist. So it could be like an actual like what's your life plot twist that's your horror story, or it's like it could be something funny also.
My immediate thought was that we never get an ACOTAR announcement. That was my first one.
Yeah,
that is just baited perpetually forever, and we never get another book, and it's just like
fair.
Yeah, here's another gigantic book in a bookstore. What do you think it means? And there's just clues upon clues, and it never actually happens. Or alternatively, I would be really sad if Quicksilver's not made and the Netflix thing doesn't pan out. I would be devastated by that. I really want to see this on screen. I think this story so good and fits so well for on screen that would be devastating. That would be terrifying for me that it didn't work out. I'd be sad for that because ACOTAR already fell through the cracks, and that would have been really cool to see too. But I think Quicksilver is on a different level from a visuals perspective. They both are. They would both be great. Yeah, regardless.
Right. And different
ways, types of stories.
Yeah. Different. The dramatic elements would be a lot more visually stunning in Quicksilver, but the world building is a lot more the fantasy element. I feel like it's a happier, not that ACOTAR is a happy story, but like it's just more, I don't know, awe-striking.
It's more of a fairy tale, whereas this is more of a nightmare.
Yeah, it is a nightmare. One of my, I guess my horror story would be I would never get the true ending of Game of Thrones because the last book isn't out.
The written one, I know.
Yeah. That's the true ending. That's the true ending. So, or like really any of the books.
I wonder if we already got that, and then he saw the reactions and was like, "Oh shit, I can't write that." Yeah, well, literally. All of us all season 8 was like, "Are you gonna fucking do Danny like that? That's not okay." Not me, Danny, obviously, but.
Right,
Khaleesi,
Daenerys.
Daenerys.
I honestly have that fear with a lot of series when I pick up a series that's not finished. Like, what if something happens, God forbid, to any of the authors, and we just don't get the ending?
That's so dark.
Think of like Onyx Storm, because they draft them as the ideas are coming to them. That's not like with Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling, before she even sat down and wrote any of the books, she had an outline of how the entire series was going to go. Not saying that these authors aren't, but they're not fleshed out at all. So by, being obsessed with something as big as, Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, Onyx Storm, if something were to ever happen or then we just don't get an ending, which obviously I care more about the health of the author than the ending, but it's still like, well, shit, we don't get to know what happens. So I feel like that's like a dice you roll.
That fits the trend.
Start reading.
Oh, absolutely. An unfinished series. There's people I know who have told me flat out, like they really want to read Fourth Wing and they've wanted to read it for so long, but because the fourth book, never mind the fifth book, is not out yet, they're not reading it until the fifth book comes out. But they'll be in line.
That's a lot of patience.
When book 5 comes out. They will
just
wait
buy the whole box
until
set.
the night release of book 5, and they'll buy all of them, and then they'll start. Literally, I have met people at our events who have come up and said that. Multiple people who are like, I would love to listen to your show, but I haven't read those books because the series is not complete. They won't read a series that isn't complete. And I was just like mind blowing.
That's fair.
And then they're like, well, what are you covering next? And I was like, oh, Quicksilver. And they're like, oh, is that part of a series too? I was like, yeah, it's another incomplete series. And they're like, yeah, I'd love to support, but I don't read anything that's not complete. And I'm like, man, you must love duologies and standalones.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting a lot of faith in an author, and because you get emotionally attached to these characters, even though they're fictitious, but you want to know. Yeah. So it's fair.
Oh, I'm like foaming at the mouth for Brimstone. I can't wait. I'm so excited. And that one's already written, but we know there's going to be another book, and we know she's already writing book 3. Which brings me to Callie Hart news, which was posted today and we didn't bring up until now, and I need to bring it up before we wrap this episode because it's juicy. So we know the dedication of this book, right, is Callie Hart dedicated the book to for those who live their nightmares so that others may have their dreams. She posted this today, so let me show you really quick. Okay, it says, sacrifice is a huge theme in Quicksilver. Kingfisher even has it tattooed onto his body. In book 2, the theme continues and intensifies. Sorry.
What do you mean? What do you mean, sorry? It's like that Jennifer Lawrence. Like, what do you mean? What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. And the way that I was just like, I have some theories. We'll talk about them next episode. But that just came out, and I can't talk about them until we're at the end. But I do think I have some idea what she's meaning. And our boy Fisher's been through so much. So I truly, truly hope that she's not really meaning him, that he's not going to be the one that's going to continue to sacrifice here, because he's already sacrificed so much. But we know that it's going to continue. I have some ideas. I hope that I'm wrong. We're just going to have to wait for the next episode to get into them.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, before we wrap up, let's talk about what's coming up next on Book Club After Dark.
So next week, we're going to dive into chapters 41 through 45 of Quicksilver by Callie Hart. So hit that subscribe button to hear more of our exciting book talk. We look forward to dissecting this novel with you.
And don't forget, we want to hear from you. If you have thoughts on Quicksilver or suggestions for future reads, drop a comment below or message us on one of our social media platforms at Book Club After Dark Pod. Show us your fan art, theories, or anything bookish you'd like to share.
You can also visit our website, bookclubafterdark.co, to stay up to date on our cozy content and check out our merch.
That's all for tonight. Sleep tight, night owls. Until next time, happy reading.